Is human language up to the task that we set it? In other words, is it actually possible to use words to convey thoughts accurately from one person to another? Can I take everything that's going on in here, organize it in such a way that it comes out in coherent fashion, either through my mouth or through that which I write down, that I can take that, transmit the result of this to someone else, they read it, interpret it, hear it, and get an accurate picture of what's going on in here? Well, personally, I don't think that that's a very realistic expectation. I think that language is so limited that it tends to garble just about anything that we attempt to communicate. Now, this is problematic for people who actually think that you can express all human knowledge through language, all human wisdom, i.e., for what one would call fundamentalist religious people of a scripture-based religion, or a scripture-based point of view. Fundamentalist Christians, fundamentalist Muslims, Orthodox Jews, this kind of thing, because they tend to hold, I don't want to blanket them all with the same thing, but they tend to hold that human knowledge, human wisdom, all of it is written down in a scripture. Okay, that's a legitimate point of view, I suppose, but I wonder if it's actually possible to do what we are expecting it to do, because if it were obvious what is written in the Bible, you wouldn't have all these huge debates over what it all means. Even among fundamentalist Christians, they certainly don't agree on what the Bible actually is telling us. The same thing goes for the Torah, the Talmud, the Quran, of course. There's always these big debates on what it all means. So if it's so clear, if it's so obvious what actually the authors of these books are trying to say, why the cacophony of conflicting voices? Now, that's just religion in general. That's just scripture-based religion. You can actually say the same thing, take the same point of view about anything that is written down, anything that is spoken, anything that relies upon communication. It garbles the message. Have you ever gotten into an argument with someone? Yes, guys out there, usually this is an argument that you have with your girlfriend, where you wonder, why is it so difficult to get through to this person when I'm making it as clear as I possibly can? And you can't believe that this person is not getting what you're saying. Now, hopefully this sort of thing doesn't happen all that often, but it's a very interesting illustration as to the prejudices, the interpretations, the preconceptions that already exist in your audience, your hearer's mind, that color things that you're saying to them. You say one thing, they hear another. I remember actually one time watching the news, and a cabinet minister in the Canadian government was addressing the Canadian Jewish Congress, or something along those lines, and he was saying something critical about the way that the Israeli security forces were treating Palestinian demonstrators. Well, it wasn't long before the audience was in a bit of an uproar. It was a fairly genteel thing, but some people were pretty disturbed by this. One woman was interviewed, and she said, "Never again will they gas us. Never again will be tracked down and killed." Now, the cabinet minister hadn't said anything advocating anything even remotely like this, and would probably have been horrified had anyone suggested this. But the woman in the audience, the woman who ended up on camera, seemed to actually believe that that's what he was advocating, or that this would inevitably lead to that result, that what the cabinet minister was saying would lead to another Auschwitz. Now, you have two people, one person trying to say one thing, somebody else is hearing something completely different. Now, it doesn't mean that the cabinet minister was saying something incomprehensible. I found it perfectly comprehensible, nor does it mean that the person who's hearing it is being hysterical. Because they sort of go, well, we heard this before. This is how it starts. Now, this person actually believes it. Now, that's a gross example. That's a very almost exaggerated example of this kind of tendency of language to get completely distorted, completely garbled, because of the prejudices already existent in the audience's mind. But this is something that happens every time anyone ever says anything. So I'm not saying that we should stop talking about anything. I'm not saying that we should stop using books or literature or speech. I wouldn't be sitting here talking to you right now if I believed that language was completely useless. However, we should be cognizant of the fact that it'll get us so far, but we shouldn't be too reliant upon it. Words are illustrations of ideas. They are coded versions of ideas. They are not the ideas in and of themselves. I think we all know this. I think we all know that I'm not saying anything new here. I'm not saying anything revolutionary or anything that we haven't already probably heard or thought of independently. But I think that we get too caught up in the idea of verbalizing that which we mean, and we also get very caught up in reading things into what other people say. Now that's fine. That's just the way humans are. But I think that we really ought to bear this in mind whenever we're trying to communicate with anyone, because it's very, very, very easy to get it wrong. It's very easy to misunderstand what someone is saying, especially if it's someone that one disagrees with. We tend to actually hear what we want to hear, i.e. we want this person to say bad things, therefore the idea in our mind is already there that this person is saying something that we disagree with. Therefore, whenever we're listening to them, we're just ready to pounce. So, in closing, I suppose I would just say we really ought to beware of language, because if you ask me, it's the single greatest culprit in the massive global misunderstanding that is taking place and seems to actually be getting more and more pronounced all the time. Be careful. You're probably not ever hearing what the other guy is trying to tell you. Thank you.